at some point in time, your students are going to discover that there are more than one type of finger pattern out there. Loch Lomond uses two finger patterns. It uses the major or 2-3 pattern, and it uses the minor or 1-2 pattern. In the way it's used through chromaticism in the second violins and violas makes it really easy to teach. I like measures 10, 11, or 26, 27, depending upon whether you're in the A section or B section of this piece. I like it because it uses both finger patterns on the same string in the same pattern. Okay, so we have D going to E, F natural, then back down to E, F sharp to G to A, the whole tetrachord. The violas don't start on a D, they have a G here, but when I teach this, I have them play, actually I have the whole orchestra play both finger patterns up and down. So open D, E, F natural, G, and you can go up to the A too, fourth finger, and then come back down to G, F natural, E, D, and then we can go up, D, E, F sharp, G, A, and then back down, G, F sharp, E, D. Two finger patterns on the same string. So they have to learn, okay, to play F natural, I have to play with a minor finger pattern, or to play F sharp, I have to play with a major finger pattern. One of my colleagues in his classroom uses a similar technique when he teaches these finger patterns. I forget, he has a cool name for it, I forget what it's called, but it also uses these slurs too, and you just kind of go from open D to E, F natural, E, D, E, F sharp, E, D, just working on going up to a low 2, back down, up to a high 2, back down, up to a low 2, back down, and he just has them noodle up and down and up and down and up and down so that they understand the difference between the finger patterns. And it's simple to do, and they get a lot of repetition with it, and eventually the light bulbs start to come on in the heads, and they start to develop those connections from the brain to the fingers, and everything starts to work. And this is kind of written in a similar way. It uses the whole tetrachord, but it's a cool technique for teaching the variances in finger patterns. And they can see what an F sharp does to the finger pattern or what an F natural does to the finger pattern. It's also something you can do with your whole orchestra. You can do this with every instrument so that everybody's learning the patterns. Now, there are some exceptions where students have minor patterns on the A string, but no major patterns on the A string. Loch Lomond is almost entirely pentatonic, which is what you would expect from folk music. However, there are some C naturals every once in a while, particularly in harmonies. Now, the cellos and bass players get C naturals more than anyone else. So if we look at measure 11, cellos cross onto the A string and play second finger, which is marked, and that's pretty cool. And bass players are going to play a C natural on the A string, which is also second finger. So they're both playing second finger on the A string, just 2 octaves apart. The other spot where they have this is measure 18 and 19, and it also corresponds to 34 and 35 in the B section. Same thing here. They go from a G to a C. Basses play second finger C on the A string, crossing down, and cellos play second finger on the A string, crossing up, placing them 2 octaves apart. Then bass players play first finger B on the A string, back to second finger C on the A string, and then open D. The cellos play open A, first finger, second finger, and then sustain back down to first finger, and then eventually we get back onto the D string with these F sharps. Now, listen carefully to make sure these are F sharps, because sometimes they get so used to playing second finger, they want to use second finger again here. And sometimes, even though the fingering is written for them to play second finger, sometimes you'll hear cellists playing third finger C sharp or bass players playing fourth finger C sharp. So listen carefully for those spots. Make sure they're playing the right notes. The trickiest part here is in the first violin, and this is the one that you don't expect, because for most folk music, scale degrees 4 and 7 are omitted. All right, think of your Kodai classes where they set up the bells. Okay, which bells do you take away from the students? 4 and 7, right? You just pull them out. And the first violins never play an F sharp, not once in this entire arrangement. But they do play one C natural, actually 2 C naturals, because it repeats. But in measure 15 and 31 on the downbeat, that's where they have their C natural. And it's not marked low 2. You just have to teach them that, there's no C sharp in the key signature, and they're going to need to play a low 2 there. So we get the double whammy. We get scale degree 4, which shouldn't be in this melody traditionally for a pentatonic folk song. And we also get a finger pattern on the A string that's not set up by anything and is not marked. That makes this C natural very easy to miss and very easy to play out of tune. So make sure you go over this with your first violin section. They're likely to miss it. Other than that C natural, I find that the first violin part is much easier to play than the second violin part. So you might want to rotate players, and this might be a good opportunity to get some of your less advanced students to play first violin part, and you can move some of your more advanced students to the second violin part, maybe give somebody another opportunity to sit concertmaster you can start grooming them for more leadership roles in your orchestra too, and kind of spread out the love a little bit more. Another technique that you're probably teaching your students around this point when you're considering programming something like Loch Lomond is the use of fourth finger in violins and violas. Now, cellos and bass players, they're playing fourth finger right out of the gate, but they also have an ergonomic advantage to where their thumb is behind their second finger and their arm is at a much more comfortable angle. When you turn this out and you get your elbow around, it's almost like someone's putting a jiu-jitsu move on you or something like that. It's not as comfortable to play, and violinists and violists tend to squeeze a lot when they play, making it difficult to play fourth finger. Every spot in this arrangement of Loch Lomond where your first violinist, second violinist, or violist have a fourth finger note, it can always be checked with that open string. You can check it for pitch, and you can check it for tone. Checking it for pitch, just making sure they match. Checking it for tone, sometimes the students are too tight and they don't put down their fourth fingers hard enough, or sometimes the finger collapses and they reach for that fourth finger note instead of put their finger down firmly, and it's going to affect the student's tone. So you're going to make sure that their fingered fourth finger note is as strong as the open string. There might be a little bit of an exception, particularly with the E string, but it's something for them to strive for. The idea is that you start getting your students to loosen up those left hands. And if you're already teaching vibrato, which you should be, that's going to help loosen everything up, because it's almost impossible to play vibrato if you're so tense. You're loosening everything up. That's going to help with your fourth finger notes, and it's going to help with your vibrato, and they all sort of work in tandem. Now, I did an episode on vibrato in season 1, and if you haven't watched that, you may want to reference that, especially the demonstration videos. There are some things that you can use in there to incorporate in your orchestra's warm-ups. They don't take long, a minute, 2 minutes. It just gets them doing something every day that resembles vibrato, or a technique that's required to play with a good vibrato. One of the most important demonstrations or warm-ups that I do are the pull-ups for fourth finger. making sure that they can pull up on the string, okay, up, down, and what that does is get them to open up the hand so that they can start to relax instead of tighten the hand and squeeze. It's very important, and it really helps with these fourth finger notes. And the sooner that you can start getting the students to relax their left hand and to vibrate, the better. Speaking of vibrato, there are many places in here that we have the opportunity to vibrate the string. Lots of half notes, some whole notes, all over the place. We can use lots of vibrato there. We don't have to use rapid machine gun vibrato like we don't need that. We can just do a little wiggle on the half note, little wiggle on the half note, just to get them doing something. Something is better than nothing in both cases. They're working towards something, and eventually that will develop into something better, and they'll start to be able to become more fluid with their vibrato, and that's the goal. When we look at the tone categories on the UIL rubric, it describes the use of vibrato, like how many of your students are consistently using vibrato and how often are your students consistently using vibrato. It doesn't say that they have to use like Wagnerian vibrato to get into the first division category. All it says is that they have to be using vibrato consistently. So they can do these little wiggles, and as far as I'm concerned as a judge, that's the effort required. If all of your students are doing this consistently, and if each individual student is doing it consistently throughout the performance, that checks that box for me. Now, it does say for the classification, which would indicate to me that your younger groups are probably going to do those little wiggles more often, and your more advanced varsity high school groups are probably going to use different types of vibrato. But you know, we can argue that at another time. The point is that they're all doing something. What's another technique that we're probably working on in class? How about bow lifts? Yeah, there are some bow lifts here, and they happen at the end of phrases. So we have this 5-7 going into 1, and we don't really want to smash 1 because we want the emphasis to be on the 5-7. So we get a nice tapered release here. Okay, we play the quarter note and then off the string, reset, ready to down bow on beat 3. We can practice it here, and we can also practice it in measure 20. In measure 36, we can practice it, and we get a longer time to spend on the note before we lift on beat 4 with a nice tapered release, and then come into this new softer section. When I'm working on these bow lifts with my students, I like to break it down into steps. Okay, so first, we're just going to play that quarter note. Okay, set the bow, play, stop. Okay, now we're going to practice the release. So quarter note, release off the string, and then stop, don't go on. Okay, then quarter note, release off the string, set the bow. Then quarter note, release off the string, set the bow, play. So all of those steps, all directed by you, not on their own. You tell them when to go on to the next step. And then you start combining steps. Play, brush, set, play, and then you can combine 2 more steps. Play, brush, set, and then you put it all together. Play, brush, set, play. When the technique that you're working on in class is reflected in your concert music, that's a huge bonus, and that's one of the reasons why I like to program this arrangement of Loch Lomond, because it has a lot of techniques that we're already learning anyway, and they can apply it directly to the concert music, which is what makes this a great teaching piece. In the next video, I would like to go over motion. And I think motion is extremely important to teach our students, and I think that it's one of the secret weapons that we should be doing as far as getting students to enjoy our classes and sign up for orchestra again next year. So we'll see you in the next video.